Hey, I am standing here on Marsh Creek, and this video series is going to be Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg. Now, Lysander Cutler, General Lysander Cutler, was in Brigadier General James Wadsworth's division of the 1st Corps, and we looked at the 1st Corps arrival at Gettysburg in an earlier video series, and this video series is going to complement that, and it's going to concentrate on the brigade of Lysander Cutler. Now, on June the 30th to an overnight to July 1st, 1863, Lysander Cutler's brigade was camped on the north side of Marsh Creek in this little meadow over here. On the other side of the creek, in this direction, was camped the brigade of Solomon Meredith. And we did a video with the 6th Wisconsin at Gettysburg, so they were over in this area. Now, Cutler's brigade consisted of, and in the morning of July 1st, when General Reynolds ordered the 1st Corps to march to Gettysburg, Lysander Cutler's brigade in this field over here began the march up the Emmitsburg Road in this direction in the following marching order: the 76th New York, followed by the 56th Pennsylvania, followed by the 147th New York Volunteers. Behind them was the 95th New York, and then behind the 95th New York was the 14th Brooklyn, also known as the 84th New York Volunteers. Following them and ending the brigade was Hall's 2nd Maine Battery. Now, Hall's 2nd Maine Battery had 6 3-inch ordnance rifles. Now, the marching order that I mentioned, the 76th New York, 56th Pennsylvania, 147th New York, 95th New York, 14th Brooklyn, and the 2nd Maine Battery, the way they marched off here would determine the position of the regiment during the Battle of Gettysburg. So that is important as we continue this video series. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 1, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 2, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. I'm here on the Emmitsburg Road at the Nicholas Corridori Farm. Of course, this farm was a farm that was here along the Emmitsburg Road in 1863 as it is today, and it raised cattle and brought the meat from the cattle that was raised and slaughtered here to a market on the York Turnpike up near the Gettysburg Square. Now, Cutler's Brigade moves in a different direction when they arrive here at the Nicholas Corridori Farm. As we've seen in our 1st Corps arrival at Gettysburg and our John F. Reynolds at Gettysburg video series, John Reynolds and his staff would proceed northbound along the Emmitsburg Road. However, the 1st Corps, and Cutler's Brigade being in the 1st Corps, would turn here at the Nicholas Corridori House in this direction and head westward toward the Lutheran Seminary and Seminary Ridge. There, along their line of march, they would be placed into line by Wadsworth, and John F. Reynolds would actually place one of their artillery pieces, which we're going to look at in an upcoming video. But again, this is where the route of the 1st Corps and Cutler's Brigade in the 1st Corps changed on the morning of July 1st, 1863, when they arrived here at the Nicholas Corridori House. As they proceeded in this direction, they then cut across the field here by this orchard and crossed over the farms that belonged to William Bliss and David McMillan, heading out toward the Lutheran Theological Seminary and Seminary Ridge, where then they would be placed in line and engaged in battle on the morning of July 1st, 1863. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 2 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. At Gettysburg, Part 3 on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook, and I'm standing here on Route 116 at the Lutheran Seminary area. In 1863, this was the Fairfield Road. Now, when Cutler's Brigade turned off at the Nicholas Corridori Farm in that direction, they headed directly here. When they got to the this area, they passed by the Fairfield Road, and also at that time there was the Middletown Road, which was a road that went into the middle of town that went right through this area right here. And we did a video on the old Middletown Road that you'll want to go back and watch. As they approached the Fairfield Road, fences obstructed their way. Now, Brigade pioneers and some men from the 76th New York were sent to take down the fences right here along the Fairfield Road. The 56th Pennsylvania loaded their weapons right here where we're standing, and local women began to meet the troops in this area and give them water. They would then head in this direction toward the seminary, passing the Samuel Schmucker House, heading right by the Lutheran Theological Seminary, and then out to a swale along the Chambersburg Pike. And in our next video, we'll talk about what happened there in the swale and why they were in the swale. I do want to mention that two houses that stand by, this one here across the road and the Samuel Schmucker house over here, also are battle-damaged structures that still have pieces of artillery shells stuck in the brick on the side of the houses. So again, on the morning of July 1st, 1863, this area at one time was almost the center of action here around 9:30 in the morning of July 1st, 1863. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 3, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. Hey, this is going to be Cutler's Brigade Part 4 at Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And as we look at the Lutheran Theological Seminary in front of us, it was Cutler's Brigade in the morning of July 1st that entered this area and came down into this low-lying swale right here where we're going along the Chambersburg Pike. While they were doing that, the battle had been raging on in the distance through Emanuel Harmon's farm and had just crossed Willoughby's Run. Pegram's artillery, who were stationed on the following ridge after McPherson's in the distance, their battalion was on Hare's Ridge, had supported that Confederate infantry advance across the Emanuel Harmon farm. Now, cutting across the Chambersburg Pike in this little low-lying swale area here, the 76th New York, still leading the march, they began out of the firing range of Pegram's, who was one ridge over. Now, of course, the 56th Pennsylvania moves into this area, and they cross the Chambersburg Pike, headed over here toward the railroad cut. Then something strange happens. John F. Reynolds gets Hall's battery, their main battery, which is at the rear of the march line, and rushes them to the front, butting in front of the 147th New York. He gets Hall's, they cross the 147th, and then head over to the ridge where he personally places them over on McPherson's Ridge. And we've touched on that in our video series, John F. Reynolds at Gettysburg. While he did that, they crossed in front of the 147th New York Volunteers, which had become confused by the move. Instead of the 147th and the other regiments crossing here in the swale, they now, along with the 14th Brooklyn and the 95th New York, head over to the McPherson farm area. And later on, they'll cross the Chambersburg Pike on the height and cross over the railroad cut that way. They lose their place. They follow the 95th and the 14th Brooklyn to the McPherson farm, where they are now in support of Hall's battery. About 5 minutes later, the regiments will then cross the Chambersburg Pike up there and then over to the railroad cut. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 4, on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. This is going to be Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 5, here on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook. And it's here where Hall's 2nd Maine Battery, moved out of line by Major General John Fulton Reynolds, places the battery right here in this position. Now, their job at this point was to draw fire from Pegram's artillery battalion, which was located over here where you see this red colored roof in the distance. That is the Frederick Herr Tavern, and they were all along on both sides of the Chambersburg Pike over there with their artillery battalion, and also Brander's artillery over here to the north side of Hers Ridge Road. This has been Cutler's Brigade at Gettysburg, Part 5, here at Hall's Main Battery on Gettysburg Battlefield Facebook.